Now, the title of the talk is a bit misleading, but in any case, I'll begin. So who of you has ever done an audition? Hands up, anyone who's done an audition. Okay, but a music audition, like singing? A violin audition by chance? Because let me tell you, that's a special kind of beast. Okay, to explain how this goes. Violinists the world over are trained to do this from a fairly young age. I mean, once they enter, like into music school and they've committed to a life in music, they must learn orchestral excerpts. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a rite of passage for any violinist because, if you don't become a massive soloist, which clearly I was going to be, you have to settle for being in an orchestra, right? So what this entails is learning a part of a part of a part of a part of a piece, right? And well, like many of those parts of a parts of a parts of a parts of a piece, and then going in front of a committee of people behind a curtain, and you play in front of them. And I mean, let me tell you, like the stories of this are just so awful because you spend months and months and months practicing and perfecting this tiny little part of a part of a part of a part of a piece. And then you go on, you play it, or you try to play it for about, let's say, 30 seconds. And guess what? If they don't like it, all that effort, all that time, out the window. It's done. And the way this works is, let me just explain to you how awful this can be, is that you can have 300 people for one position in an orchestra. So let's say Philadelphia Orchestra, wants a violinist. They'll have what's known as a cattle call. And there's a reason why it's called that, because we're like a bunch of cows in one room, all of us sawing away, and you have different personalities that play. But anyway, I mean, the fact of the matter is that after the first 300 are, playing in front of this committee of 5 or 10 people, right? Then you go for the second round where you have 15 people, and then by the third round, this has been winnowed down to 3 people. So let's just, ponder this for a second. 300 down to 3. And let me tell you, I mean, by the end of that process, the committee is like, I don't give a damn what the guy plays as long as it's over, right? As long as it's done. And, the reason why I explain all this, why I say, all of this preamble is because to my mind, right, there is no fate. It really is a function of luck. Because once you get to the notion of 300 people being winnowed down to 3, those 3 can play perfectly. They have played every single excerpt, every single moment perfectly. There is no difference, right? And the judges, I mean, it becomes a very, very subjective matter of, well, what did the judge eat that day? Or did he watch, I don't know, CSI Miami and thought, the brown-looking violinist looked good that day, for example, right? So, I mean, it just changes in their mind. And all this relates to my main story, which is how I went from being a violinist to a journalist. And so, don't let this rugged exterior confuse you, right? I actually was a real violinist. I practiced for hours and hours on end, and I did all the audition circuit, and I did the cattle call, I did all that stuff, right? And I ended up, eventually, in the Lebanese Philharmonic, the other LPO, as we would call it in the business, because the first one is the London Philharmonic, obviously. So, in any case, I was a violinist, I was practicing, and everything was hunky-dory, rock and roll, and I was going to go and apply for other orchestras, etc. And then one fine day in March, my attitude problem sort of went too far. And I had a bit of a fracas with a conductor. We were playing a piece, and, well, frankly, I was messing around. I was just playing, I was playing correctly, but I decided instead of playing in the right position, which was to play it somewhat, conservatively down on the lower part of the violin, I decided to mess around and just played it up top here, kind of like gangster, as you would say, all right? The conductor stops. Nabih, play in the right position. And after 3 years of this awful orchestra, I just couldn't take it. I'm like, you know what? I've been playing violin for over 30 years. Don't tell me how to play. And he's like, no. Play in the right position. I'm like, maestro, don't tell me how to play. I can teach you how to conduct. And that was it. Everyone was silent. And there was a bit of a nod. And he's like, okay. And 2 weeks later, guess what? I was out on my ass. Can we say, no, I'm out on my butt, pardon me. And so, here I was, a violinist without an orchestra. I had literally, not literally, but I was, out in the cold, to quote John le Carré. What to do, right? I was in Beirut. I still had my motorcycle, so it was okay. I was making some money as a translator, no big deal. And then, this is where luck comes into play. So my flatmate, right, is a percussionist in the orchestra. He is a Polish percussionist in the orchestra. The reason why I say this is because it's important. Because at the same time, he was friends with another Polish person in Beirut, who was a Syrian-Polish woman named Rima Marrouche, who was working at the time for Los Angeles Times and NPR. So, The Syrian war is starting. It's all crazy. Rima was then kind of dating / married to this Syrian poet. You know the type, big fro, you know. I'm an artist, sort of thing, right? Well, I mean, so he thought he was a poet, right? And so his poetry had to be translated from Arabic to English. And Rima, you know, seeking a cheap translator, hi, cheap translator, by the way, she said, okay, Nabih, can you do this for me, please? And I did. And let me tell you, it was terrible poetry. I mean, I hate to say this, but it was like, bullets over asphalt, clouds of mist of red. And you're like, whatever. Anyway, so I did it. She liked it, he liked it, the publisher apparently liked it, and then she said, Nabih, look, I have too much work with NPR and LA Times. Would you like to translate for the LA Times every now and then? I'm like, okay, whatever, beer money, who cares, sure. And you know, I mean, I'm not working so much, so might as well. And I go and I meet my then boss, Patrick McDonald, who, you know, I guess most of you don't know him, but he's kind of like a 6'2" leprechaun with a beret and constantly smoking and just an absolute, you know, wizard. And Patrick, for some reason, thought I was more interesting than just a, sort of like a 5 minutes, you know, conversation of, okay, hey, you speak English? Yeah. You speak Arabic? Yallah, bye. No. We sat there for 4 hours and spoke about everything and nothing, as people would say. But after that, after those 4 hours of just blabbing away, he's like, you know, Nabih, you sound like a smart guy. Why don't you write for us every now and then as well? And you could have a violin, and who knows, maybe it's a second career for you. I'm like, okay, sure, rock and roll, whatever. Not realizing how vanishingly rare this is, to be clear, or how insanely difficult it is to have that kind of mentor. And it just came in units, actually. But then, this was the moment of fate. So, a few months later, I get a call. Nabih Bulos? Yes, Nabih Bulos. So, you've been invited to play for 1 year with the Qatar Orchestra. Now, let me explain this to you. The Qatar Orchestra, when it first opened, this was like the haven of all violinists. So think of Jazeera as the haven for all journalists, like a place where money flows and where everyone can do whatever they want. And oh, my project, I can do anything. Well, this was Qatar Orchestra. You would go there. They would literally pick you up from the hotel in a limousine. Me, a violinist, a lowly section violinist, was having a limousine waiting for me at the Movenpick, if you please. And I would go and I would play, and then when done, the limousine would take me back home, to my hotel. Everything was paid for. Everything was, like no expenses, spared. And so here I was with an offer. They're like, yeah, you come to Qatar, you come to Doha, you'll get to enjoy the W Hotel every night, whoop-de-doo, right? And I mean, the money's tremendous, free housing, etc. And then there was Patrick. Yeah, man, we're, still here, LA Times is functioning, And mind you, again, don't let these good looks fool you. This wasn't TV, this was newspaper work. So no one has any money. Everything sucks. We're all going to fail soon. Everything is closing. There is no foreign. Wait, a foreign desk? What foreign desk? This is how it was going to be. And so the choice was remain in the newspaper business or go to a life of luxury as an orchestral violinist in Qatar. And so I stood in front of the computer and I had written thanks but no thanks. I remember. And it was a matter of sending it to Patrick or sending it to the management of the Qatar Orchestra. Click. That's it. Thank you.